Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. I talk about teaching English in other countries so much that I thought it might be helpful to hear what the average day was like teaching English in a school. And I think the important thing to start out with is that the hours are significantly reduced from what you're used to. Usually, if you're teaching ESL, at least in China, which is the only place I've taught it in schools for an extended period of time, although I've taught here and there in other countries, and the hour requirements were the same. So instead of 40 hours a week, you're working 20 to 25 hours a week. I've almost never heard of someone working more than 25 hours a week, except sometimes for office hours, where you're not teaching, you're just sitting in the office to show people, look, we have foreign teachers, which does happen, but you don't have to do, and you can confirm that's part or not part of the contract before you sign up. What is common is 25 hours a work week. Most of those are going to be on Saturday or Sunday. And that 45 minutes of teaching is also reduced by the in-class breaks you have. So you'll have a 45-minute class broken up with a 10-minute break in the middle, so that's really only 35 minutes per class of teaching. Or sometimes there's longer ones that are 1 hour of class broken up by a 15-minute break. So 25 minutes and 20 minutes of teaching or something like that. So if you take in the at least 25%, 25 to 30% of the class that is break time, I guess you're really only working 15 to 20 hours a week, roughly, because you got a few hours of break time in that 20-hour week. And since the classes are only 45 minutes long generally, that's like if you work, just imagine the job you're working at now in the States, and you only had to work for 45 minutes at a time, and you had a 10-minute break in the middle of those 45 minutes. And you have a break in between those 45-minute shifts, including the break. That's the tempo of the classes. So as an example, let's say that you're scheduled for 2 classes, a 2-hour shift on Tuesday. Those 2 hours, first subtract the 15-minute prep time before each class. So now you're down to 1 hour 30 of actual teaching rather than the 2 hours you're scheduled for. And then you also subtract the 2 10-minute breaks that are in each of those classes, each of those 45-minute sessions. So now you're down to 70 minutes out of what was supposed to be 120 minutes. So on your Tuesday class that you have 2 scheduled hours for, you're only working 1 hour and 10 minutes out of those 2 hours. The schedule you'll be getting into is important to know because it's a completely different, much less strenuous schedule than anything you've probably worked before. Not least importantly, because all of the curriculum is provided and available by the school if you're working for a school, which is how most English teachers operate teaching English. So you don't have to figure out how to do your job like you do in most other jobs. The curriculum is right there, and if you have a template, like the one I'm about to give you in a minute, very simple, activity, text, blah, 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 then you have all of the classes you're ever going to do, they fit in that template. But what if the child acts up, or what if something shows up? If something goes wrong, there is an assistant in that school, usually one for your class specifically, or one for the whole school, and they will deal with any problem children or parents who want to talk to you, or anything like that. So anything that interrupts that curriculum and lesson plan, anything that disrupts your actual teaching time. The school has someone available that will deal with that part of it. You are just there for the teaching. So the job is much simpler with far less responsibilities and far less hours required for $2,500 in a country that costs $500 a month to live in. So any problem that comes up or any class you're in, you know it's 25 minutes maximum, and then you're going to have a break. And then another 20 minutes later, the class is over. So whatever the class is like, you can get through it. Just wait a few more minutes. As for the weekly schedule itself, most of your week, Monday through Friday, is going to be free because The kids don't have formal school on Saturdays and Sundays, so that's usually the heavy day for ESL. So you could have 8 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday, and then 10 hours through the rest of the week, which, as mentioned, you still need to subtract the breaks and prep time from to get down to your actual teaching hours. Or 6 hours on each day in the weekend, and then again 10 hours through the rest of the week. So you might, Monday through Friday, have no classes, which is very common, or have one class on Monday, 3 classes on Tuesday, and 4 classes in total on Friday. In many of the schools I knew about, the teachers didn't even work 25 hours a week. They were prescribed for 25 hours per week, but it depends on how the school recruits the kids. So there might be less hours to work in general, but you'll probably still get paid the same salary and is a point you can put in your contract before you sign up. But it happened very often in China that teachers wouldn't have to teach the full 20 hours a week. And as a result, a lot of them would work 2 jobs at 2 different schools, or work part-time at one and full at another, because that's still only 30 hours a week, and now they're getting paid twice. This is a long intro of benefits in general to ESL before the actual school day schedule I want to talk about, but it's because the actual school day is not very remarkable. What's remarkable is how little you are actually required to work in order to get your full salary. 20 to 25-hour work weeks, 25 to 30% of that is taken up by in-class breaks, as well as the scheduled prep time between classes. All of the material is provided, so everything is already taken care of on the curriculum end. You'll have local faculty members and assistants who will help you wrangle the actual kids and parents. And your salary absolutely will cover several months of living in the country every month that you teach at those very low hours are going to pay for several months living in that country. So you will be saving money with way less stress and trouble than you're probably going through now at your job. Bearing all of those benefits in mind, here's what my typical 45-minute class session looked like, which is the norm amount of time. So 5 minutes before the class, I would check what section the class learned last time, open the PowerPoint for the next section. So say last time they studied 3-3, this time I would open up 3-4 PowerPoint. All the kids would come into class, usually 5 minutes before or right on the dot. I'd spend about 5 minutes reviewing stuff they learned before or introduction stuff. Hello, Cassie. She'd say hello back. Great work. How are you, Charles? I am good. Great work. Do that for 5 minutes. Then about 5 minutes of repeating from the PowerPoint or the textbook or flashcards, whatever your classroom materials are. Do you want spaghetti? The kids repeat after you. Do you want spaghetti? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. No, I don't. No, I don't. Great. Good work. Now that's 10 minutes of the class gone. So for the next 10 minutes, now that they've repeated the words, have them practice it with you. Marco, do you want chicken? He says, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Great. Melissa, do you want a sandwich? Yes, I do, no, I don't. Great. Cassie, you ask Marco, do you want chicken? Cassie asks, do you want chicken? Marco says, yes, I do, no, I don't. Great. Marco, you ask Melissa, and that happens for the next 5 minutes. First half of the class is now over. Break time. So chill out for 10 minutes. The kids are going to go out to the bathroom, get some water, tell their mom I want chicken, something like that. After 10 minutes, class starts up again. The assistant calls everyone back into the room. Or what usually happened was I would say, 上课了, which is class is starting. And all the kids run back in, and it's time for the second half of class, which is 10 minutes of reading or repeating from the PowerPoint textbook or flashcards, and then 10 minutes of practice by me asking them questions, them asking each other questions, or you can use an activity or a game. A good example is like if they're learning colors, then you can say, touch blue, and the kids will go and touch something blue in the classroom. Great. Touch yellow, and the kids will run around to another part of the classroom and touch yellow. So you do that for 10 minutes, and then class is over. And that is 1 hour of logged work. Say hello to the class, repeat from the textbook, practice questions, 10-minute break, read from the textbook, practice questions or a game, class is over. 1 work hour done. You'll usually have 15 minutes to prep if there's another class after that. Sometimes you only have 1 class a day, especially during the week. So that might be your whole work day. On, let's say, Saturday, which is the busiest day, and you have 6 hours of classes. So you'll work 10 to 4, but each of those hours includes the 10-minute break in class and the 15 minutes of prep time before the next class. So out of those 6 hours that you're scheduled that day, remove an hour and a half for the 15-minute prep time each hour, and remove another 60 minutes for all the break times you have in class. And you're really teaching 3.5 hours out of those 6 hours that you're scheduled to work that day. And that's just how English schools are structured. They all have breaks in the middle of a 45-minute session of class. You always have 15 minutes between classes to prep. So a significant part of the 25 teaching hours you have are taken up by break times or prep times. It's not going to be a cakewalk, but it is about as easy as it sounds. And the routine doesn't change. You greet the class, 10 minutes of material, 10 minutes of activity or game, break time, 10 minutes of material, 10 minutes of activity or game, class is over. So once you get the routine down, which is pretty straightforward, you're set for as long as you want to teach at that school. And if it's Wednesday or like an off day, Monday through Friday, that's a whole day. You showing up, teaching for maybe 30 minutes, and then, okay guys, great work. And you have the rest of the day to pursue whatever you like, or play video games, or start day drinking, ride a bike to a concert, like whatever you want to do. Most of your days are free. And even Saturdays, even the busiest days, your evenings are still going to be wide open because classes aren't going to go past early evening, like 5 or 6 o'clock, late afternoon. I think the latest ones I ever did ended at 8 p.m., but that was pretty rare. The other thing you might do is teach one-on-one, which is pretty common. I just checked one-on-one classes in Beijing, and a bunch of them are still hiring. And they pay much more for one-on-one than they do for full-time classes. So they'll post advertisements in like classified sections of the Beijinger or online, and you can teach people one-on-one for 400 to 800 renminbi per hour, which is 50 to 100 US dollars per hour, like face-to-face one-on-one classes. And you would need to provide your own curriculum. But what I did when I did this was get a ESL textbook from the internet. There are many freely available full ESL curriculum for every age level, and you just choose the lesson appropriate to the level of the student you're teaching and block it out like that. Okay, we'll do 10 minutes of reading comprehension, we'll do 10 minutes of practice, 10 minutes of writing, 10 minutes of back and forth questions, 10 minutes of review for the material, and then class is over. Actually, thinking about it now, my one-on-one sections were more conversational, so they were even simpler. They usually only had 3 sections. It would be 20 minutes of reading comprehension, 20 minutes of writing, and 20 minutes of conversation. Or 40 minutes of conversation and no writing sometimes. Just have a 40-minute conversation about the material. I remember I was teaching Through the Looking Glass one time, and I just asked reading comprehension questions and what the student thought about that part of the story and what it meant for Alice. Then the class ended, and you just made 50 or $100. And my apartment, while I was living in Chengdu, was 80 US dollars per month. So in one hour one-on-one teaching session, you could easily make your monthly rent. Certainly in 2 hours, if not 1. But that's how straightforward the process is. Find a good textbook online, use whatever age your one-on-one student is at, construct 10-minute segments as long as they want to do the class, or 20 minutes if it's 2 hours. Sometimes I would do that. We'd read for 20 minutes, do back and forth questions for 20 minutes, reading comprehension review for 20 minutes, and now 2 hours is gone. And you just got paid for 2 hours. ESL is such a huge industry that there are textbooks, free curriculum everywhere that you can use so that you don't have to spend time making your own curriculum. Many schools like to develop their own curriculum. There doesn't seem to be any difference if you use someone else's curriculum or develop your own. The parents don't care about the brand. The parents care that their students are learning English in the classroom, and especially that their children, your students, are engaged. That's what the parents I've talked to really care about. Oh, speaking of that, I let them sit in on the first day of class or the first day that their student joins the class so that they can see how the class is run. But after that first day, the parents do not sit inside. If the class lets the parents sit inside, if the school allows that, you might want to look at other schools because it is such a pain. The parents will absolutely talk in class. The kids will run back to their parents half the time. They'll be afraid to listen to you because when their parents there, they're supposed to listen to the parents. It's a whole big mess. So just make sure that the parents aren't in the class, except maybe for a demo session. Wow, this really went by so fast, but there's so little to actually tell you because it's one routine, and so much of the classroom experience is that 45-minute session with younger children, so the material's always going to be fairly fundamental, and 10 minutes material, 10 minutes practice, 10-minute break, 10 minutes material, 5 or 10 minutes of an activity or game. Class. They pay you money and you save money starting that month and just going on from there. What's so awesome too is that you're living in another country, so it's a constantly interesting environment that you're living in. You're learning things, learning a new language maybe, making new friends, just learning things about people that you would never guess if you only lived in one country's culture. Even if it's a multicultural country, countries feel different. People move different, the food is different, the architecture is different, everything is different. So while you're having this wild new experience and you have to go to work still, you're working probably less than half the actual hours you're working now. You're going to be saving way more per month if you're working in most countries with a much lower cost of living than the US. It's such a better deal for so many people in the US who have to struggle to survive. And the job itself is helpful to the students. It's actually giving them more opportunities in the world. So it's great, you're learning, it's a fun adventure, and you're working way less hours and saving way more money. Geez, this might be the whole episode, because there's really not much more to it. Once you develop your schedule for school children versus high school children versus adults, and you can choose to just teach school children, which is obviously the easiest, you're done. That is a day in the life of an ESL teacher. And what's great is from the first day that you start that schedule and every day that you repeat that simple classroom schedule, you're accruing experience. And every 6 months provides you with an immediate increase in your starting salary. An immediate starting increase to your salary. If you teach for a full year and you go in for a job position and be like, yeah, I've already been teaching for a year, and they have a range of pay that they offer on the website or whatever, you can ask for the top pay right away if you already have a year of experience. If you have 2 years of experience is the maximum almost any school will ask for before you start teaching. And if you have 2, you can ask for the top pay very easily and all the benefits because you have exactly what they need. They need someone comfortable in the classroom who's comfortable repeating from this textbook, taking breaks, and then getting paid. And they can tell all the parents, oh yes, he already has 2 years of experience. That's huge for the school. If they can explain to new parents to your classroom that you've already been teaching for a little while. So any amount of experience you gain is so valuable to your future prospects and your immediate prospects and the benefits you receive as an ESL teacher. Also, the contract, the maximum is going to be 1 year, and usually it's only 6 months. And again, usually it's only a handshake deal. Because if it is a terrible situation, you can just leave. The ESL thousands of jobs in each country. China alone has thousands of jobs available right now for ESL teachers. If you join a terrible school and they're treating you poorly, leave and go to a better school. Of course, talk to the people there. If it's a simple matter of scheduling you too much or not paying you enough, you find out other teachers are being paid more, talk to them directly. Let them know what's wrong. Ask them to fix it. If they agree and fix it immediately, good. If they do not, hoof it, because you've got job security. There's no point wasting time at a place that doesn't appreciate your skill set. Now, you'll very likely have gotten offers from people when you were just walking around in public. So you can go to one of those schools or just walk into any ESL school and say, hey, I'm teaching at a school that is not treating me right. They're offering me too little pay for too many hours. Can you offer me less hours and more pay than this school is paying me? And they'll straight up tell you yes or no, because all the ESL schools know that there are thousands of jobs available for you as a native English speaker. And you have your schedule, like how to teach in mind, so you're worth your weight in gold. 10 minutes material, 10 minutes activity, 10 minutes break, 10 minutes material, 10 minutes activity, school's out. Once you have that schedule and you're comfortable standing in a classroom, you have all the experience you need. Yeah, I don't have much more to add on to this. I'll go over looking for jobs where a lot of that is applicable in another episode. I know that can be daunting if you haven't done it before, so I'll go into looking for a job in much more detail and all the benefits and all that kind of stuff. But for now, yes, the ESL teaching schedule is that simple, and once you learn it, you can repeat that schedule the whole time you're teaching. And it'll work, and you'll get paid, and you'll save money. And if you're in China, you're guaranteed to eat good food. So thank you very much for listening. I wanted to get out how simple and regimented the classroom ESL teaching schedule is, because I know it seems like, well, what does it mean to teach and all this kind of stuff? But that's what it breaks down to. A few 10-minute sections, and then class is out. You can talk to me at bitofarambler@gmail.com or on all the socials. Find the podcast wherever. Thanks for listening again. Thanks for listening a third time, and I'll talk to you next time.